Hi, everybody, and welcome to Wednesday's edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. I am John Schmelke, as Paul Dottino. We'll take your calls at 201-939-4513. We have our initial 53-man roster. If you want a quick breakdown of it, position by position, you can go check out the Giants Huddle podcast. Sytak and I recorded something this morning. It's up there. We'll, of course, try to get a lot of reaction from the phones today, again, at 201-939-4513. But, Paul, we do expect some changes here moving forward. We don't know what they're going to be, when they're going to come, but I don't think I've ever been here where the first 53 guys are the 53 guys that are suited up for the first regular season game. That rarely happens, so I would expect some changes over the next week or so, whether it's today with waiver claims or a little bit later on, however it ends up going. So this isn't set, but the Giants have put together here, and I can go through some of the particulars in a little bit, a very young roster.
Yeah.
That they're going to compete with this year. And I guess I'll start by asking you very simply, what were, if any, of the moves for this roster surprises for you?
I had a surprise at the linebacker spot. I had a surprise at the offensive line spot. I thought that the Giants would go with 9 linebackers. I thought they would go with 9 offensive linemen.
I was surprised Bryce Ford Wheaton beat out Boykin and Allen Robinson, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I would have kept Allen Robinson on my 53. Remember, I don't do the prediction business. I will not predict what the Giants' 53 is. I talk about what my 53 would be, because we don't know enough about the injuries and what's going on behind closed doors to make that prediction.
Yeah, and we talked about that when Sytak went on Monday. Like, we just didn't know the statuses of, like, Isaiah McKenzie and Gunnar Olszewski. So how are you supposed to predict who's going to be there? All the linebackers that are banged up. Just not knowing the injury part of it makes it difficult.
Johnson, Coughlin.
Adams.
Mm-hmm. These guys were all nicked up in various degrees, and coach would only say, well, they're week to week. Well, I'm sorry, but that means you're giving me a mathematical equation that has pieces missing. I can't add 2 + 2 + X + Y = question mark. I can't do that, and I won't do that. So I make my own 53 for the guys that I would keep, and I had Allen Robinson on my team. Now, that doesn't mean he can't be back here today. He could be, but as of now, he's not. So,
and this is, by the way, when teams are scrambling to try to get those practice squads together. Now that the waiver deadline passed at 12, we have not received any word on any waiver claims yet.
No, we have not. Now, I won't only say this about Bryce Ford Wheaton. I was a big fan last year, thought he was going to make the 53. He would have been on my 53 about 2.5 to 3 weeks ago, but I thought Allen Robinson got better and better and was more of an impact player as we got to the final cutdown day. So as I was fussing with this, and we've talked about this, 3:30 in the morning, this is what I do. And I had Allen Robinson on my 53. So
yeah, and my guess as to why Bryce Ford Wheaton was able to kind of slide on here, we talked about these receivers being in buckets. You have the guys that would be more of receiver-type players in Isaiah Hodgins and Allen Robinson. You had guys that would be more special teams players like Miles Boykin. And I think Bryce Ford Wheaton could maybe have more of a potential to dip into both buckets than maybe the other guys, right?
He's also younger.
That was part 2. He's also the younger player, just 24 years old. And if you look at the measurables, 220 pounds, 6'3", ran a sub-4.4 at the combine. So you see there is potential there. So you put all those things into the bucket where he was a very good gunner for the Giants last year. So I imagine if he's active on game days, he could very well play that role again once the season gets going. So I think you put all that together, they decide to go with the guy that, you know what? Bryce Ford Wheaton in week 1 is not going to be a better special teams player than Miles Boykin. He's not.
No.
But you get to week 5 and 6, maybe he's going to be just as good, and then maybe, he can be a big, to use your terminology, skyscraper-type wide receiver to fit that niche in the wide receiver room. So I think the fact that he's young and can do maybe a little bit of both those things is what made him a little bit attractive.
I'll give you a third reason, in addition to the 2 that you have. Third reason is because Bryce Ford Wheaton is so young and does have really good measurables, there may be a better chance he gets claimed on waivers. Allen Robinson and Miles Boykin were both cut and street free agents by the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Good point.
And nobody brought them in. The Giants did. So you could assume that Bryce Ford Wheaton might be a tad more attractive to somebody else, and that the other 2 guys, Allen Robinson and Miles Boykin, I would think have legitimate chances to come back to the practice squad, well, you got a better chance to retain those guys and keep them in the building than maybe Bryce Ford Wheaton.
Yeah, it's a good point. Offensive line, I only had 9 on mine as well. In retrospect, I'm kind of kicking myself. I think I did this last year, too, when I had one fewer offensive lineman on than what they ended up putting on the roster.
Well, 9's a common number, John.
Yeah, but I think they actually kept 10 last year. I didn't go back and look at it, but I'm pretty, now that after it happened this year, I'm like, wait a second, did I make the same mistake 2 years in a row when I was trying to figure this thing out? And I think I did. And look, Paul, with what this team went through last year with the injuries on the offensive line, can you blame them keeping an extra guy there? So now you have primary backups at each one of the positions. You have a couple extra guys on top of that can play multiple spots. A young guy in Kubas who they didn't want to lose in case a team claimed them off of waivers. So to me, they have themselves covered with 2 or 3 backups at each one of the spots here. Just real quick, if Illuminor and Thomas are your starting tackles, you got Neal and Azudu as your backup tackles. You have John Michael Schmitz as your starting center. You have Schlotman as your backup center. Throw in Runyon and Van Roten as guys that can move over and play that spot if you need to.
Mm-hmm.
Then at guard, you have your 2 presumptive starters in Runyon and Van Roten. You have Stinney as your primary backup there. Azudu can move inside the tackle if you need him to. You have Kubas as a young guy there. And you're and who knows what they're going to do with Evan Neal, if they're going to try to run him at some guard at some point too. So you have a bunch of guys that can back up multiple spots. So you shouldn't get, unless you're going to have a deal where you lose 4 guys, you're not going to have a come off the street type of scenario like you had last year with Justin Pugh.
That makes a lot of sense. My deal with Schlotman was very simple, and you mentioned it just a moment ago. The fact that Van Roten and Runyon could be an emergency center, that gives me 3 guys who can snap the football if I need them to. So do I really need a backup center by trade if I believe that Van Roten, who took quite a bit of center snaps when he got here, and Runyon has the potential to do it? I did not see the necessary need to keep Schlotman as the number 10 offensive lineman.
They kept 5 interior defensive linemen. That's how many I thought they were going to keep. I'm sure you did. You have the same 5 there.
We
so
agreed
did
on
I.
that.
That's Lawrence, Chapman, Davidson, Nunez, Roches, and Riley. Linebackers, I was one short 2, and that was at the edge. I'll separate these into groups. So you had the 4 edge guys everyone knew were going to be on the roster.
Yeah.
With Thibodeau, Burns, Basham, and Ojulari. Then they decided to give Ben Whitley a spot. And you know what? He earned it in the preseason games. He played well. You want to reward that. And he was present on the special teams units in that 3rd preseason game as well. So we'll see, and I'm sure he's one of these guys that's staring at the waiver wire, today and like, come on, I want to stick. But he certainly, with his play in the preseason games, earned his way onto that 53.
Yeah, again, the tricky part for me here was not knowing about the injuries to McFadden, to Johnson, to Coughlin. The Giants had all these linebackers nicked up over the course of the last 2 weeks.
And Matt Adams, they end up putting on
Adams
IR designated to return, correct?
Yeah, he was a retrievable IR guy. So the unit was really, when we finally looked at it at the end, it was littered with injured guys.
And I'm not surprised, like the offensive line, Paul, they decided to pump up the numbers in this unit a little bit, probably to cover themselves because of the injury issues they were having.
Well, so that's understandable. But again, without having any realistic knowledge of what the medics were saying about these injured linebackers, to be frank, I was surprised that Johnson, Coughlin, McFadden, and Whitley all made it. I would have thought that at least one of those guys. Now, it would have been between Johnson, Whitley, and maybe Coughlin, maybe. I don't know. Again, he's been out for a couple weeks.
Whitley's healthy, though. He's not.
Whitley's healthy.
Correct.
Whitley's healthy. He would have been a bubble player for me, but we discussed this last week. Of the next line of linebackers, he was the guy who was the most productive.
Yep, I agree.
So yeah, I could see him maybe sneaking on, but with the injured guys, I just didn't know. And Muasau, to be frank, look, this may not be very popular amongst people out there, but to me, he was very, very borderline. I get it. Special teams, he's probably going to be really good on special teams, but I think I probably, as a 6th-round draft pick, I probably could have snuck him through waivers onto practice squad.
Yeah, that would have been borderline. I don't know if he would have made it. And we should mention, by the way, we talked about some of the injured guys. Isaiah McKenzie was just put straight on injured reserve. So
Right.
he's out for the year. He is on the Giants IR
Right.
list, and we'll see what happens there.
Which,
Gunnar
by the way-
Olszewski, who apparently is healthy enough, and he did make that final.
That was the other medical issue we talked about last week.
We just didn't know which one of those guys were closer.
So how can you sit here and say, "Oh, I'm going to make this prediction" when we had no clue medically what was going on with those guys?
Then in the defensive back room, Paul, I'm going to put Isaiah Simmons aside as like rover
I
guy.
list him as a linebacker. I don't list him as a
However
DB.
we want to list him, he's there. You have the 4 safeties. They got Javarius Owens on along with the 3 safeties that we thought they would keep.
Mm-hmm.
And then, frankly, the 5 corners that they did not play in the final preseason game or the 5
Yes.
corners that made the final or the initial 53. Trey Herndon, the only guy that did not play in that final preseason game, he did not make it. I was going back and forth between Herndon and Owens. Like the last day or so, I kept flopping back and forth between the two. I thought they might want a true backup slot guy, which they don't really have here, which is why I thought Trey Herndon, for me, might make it. But he's been okay in camp. I think he's done a fairly good job. He's played a lot of slot. And that was the only question I had in the defensive back.
Hit the repeat button. Javarius Owens has been nicked up the last couple of weeks. Another guy.
Yeah.
Without knowing what his medical condition was, I did not know if I could keep him. Now, remember, last year I was very high on him. And I pushed him all through the offseason. But then he was rather quiet during the summer. Then he got nicked up, and I'm saying to myself, well, okay, he's probably nicked himself off the 53. And yet somehow he was able to survive. They do not have a true backup slot. You're absolutely right, John. They don't.
It would be Nick McLeod, I would think, right?
Right now, he's got to be.
Right.
But he's not a true slot. He can do it. Again, the jack of all trades guy, the Swiss Army knife guy, which is why I don't think they want McLeod to start, because they want to be able to plug him in anywhere at any time without having to shuffle the roster or the lineup.
Correct. All right, we got a couple calls coming in here. We'll screen them. We'll get you guys up. One thing I want to note about the roster, and I pulled some numbers on it, Paul. This is an extremely, extremely young roster.
Mm-hmm.
Of the 53, only 9 players are older than 27. 9. All right? 2 of them are special teamers in Kreider and Gano. You have Bobby Okereke, who's your signal caller and captain on defense, and we'll talk about the captains too. I think that's a guy you want to be a veteran that runs your whole defense, right? Chris Manhurst, the big, powerful blocking tight end, older player, works for me. Then you have Nunez Roches, who's over that age limit. And then the other 4 are all offensive linemen that were added in free agency this offseason. Van Roten, Stinney, Schlotman, Illuminor. Those are the other 4 that are in the older category. And again, you want veterans on the offensive line that know how to come together and play as a group. So I think of the older players, they are in spots for the most part that you don't mind having older players in.
Well, let's face it, the offensive line is not a speed or young man's position. I mean, you see guys in this league playing well into their late 30s, and there are even some 40-year-old linemen in the NFL.
Look at Whitworth, how long he went, right?
So,
Tyron Smith's, 36 when we saw him at Jets camp
that's the
last
point.
week?
You don't have to be a young guy to be productive in that spot. And so, the Giants, obviously knowing that they had to retool what was a really, really rough offensive line last year, decided instead of trying to develop a whole slew of young guys and hoping and praying that they'll mature and that they'll get on the horse quickly, they decided to go and spend some money and get guys who have experience and who know what they're doing, and you don't have to worry about spending time teaching them how to be pro linemen. That was the strategy, and we'll see if it pays off. I understand it. Now, whether or not it works, well, that doesn't always happen, as we've seen here many a times.
All right, so I'm gonna play a little guessing game with you, Paul.
Yeah.
How many players on this roster are 24 years old or younger?
Oh, wow.
24 or younger.
Probably as many as 20.
25.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
How many players have 4 years of experience or fewer? So are ostensibly still on their rookie contracts.
Well, that should be about the same number, because usually 4 years is going to take you to 25 years old.
32.
Okay. That's good.
So 7 more players. Those must be 26-year-olds that came to the league at 22. and they have 4 years.
That's good. That's good. I mean,
it's a very young roster.
Because if you believe in this coaching staff, well, you want to not only economically is it better off because you can get guys on the cheaper side, but also you want these guys to be groomed. You want them to be molded like a piece of clay and work together and hopefully get together and become good at the same time.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say about the ages here, Paul, is that a lot of these young players are focused in two perimeter areas that I think could end up determining how good this season is going to be. The first is at wide receiver. The youngest player on this roster, the only 21-year-old, is Malik Neighbors.
Right.
When we're at the end of the year, he might be the best player on this roster.
He could be.
Or at least in the top 5, along with, to say he's going to be better than Dexter Lawrence and Andrew Thomas is probably maybe a bridge too far.
Yeah, okay.
But he's there at 21. There's only two 22-year-olds on this team. One of them is Jalen Hyatt.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Wandale Robinson, that's 23.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very young group.
And
then on defense, what's the biggest question we have on defense?
I'm not going to answer you, but hint people, it involves the passing game.
It is in the defensive backfield. The other 22-year-old on this roster is Drew Phillips, who's going to be the starting nickel.
Yes.
23-year-olds, Deonte Banks, Cordell Flott, who, if you remember, came into the league at 20 years old.
Correct.
Dane Belton, and Tyler Nubin. All 23.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the grizzled veterans. Javarius Owens is 24. Jason Pinnock is 25. And Nick McLeod is 26.
There you go.
So you are looking at two extremely young units, and this goes back to a common conversation we had this offseason, Paul. The success of this season is going to be determined by the players that have been drafted over the past 2 or 3 years becoming what the Giants thought they would become when they drafted them.
Hence also why, and Joe Shane was very clear about this when he went to Shane Bowen and he went to Brian Dable and made the deal to go get Brian Burns, understanding he probably could not revamp the entire secondary with experience and with production and with strong resumes, he decided load up on the pass rush because that's the one thing you can do by adding one stud impact player that can have a ripple effect on the secondary. That's the only way to do it, is by going to get an intimidating pass rusher who can mess up and disjoint the other team's passing attack. You can't do it by just getting one guy in the secondary. One guy in the secondary, unless it's Deion Sanders, and he can literally shut off half the field, and those guys come along once in a lifetime. Without one of those guys, you can't have that kind of impact with one secondary player, but you can with one pass rusher.
Now he better have that impact.
Needs to.
Has to.
Needs to.
100%. All right, let's open up the phones unless you have something else you want to add on the 53.
Well, the only thing that I would say, John...
the captains we should do too, by the way.
Okay, we'll get to that in a second. We discussed this the other day on the show. 3 tight ends, 3 running backs, 3 quarterbacks. We were not surprised in that regard. And, whether or not that changes today, we know there's going to be changes and these numbers are going to get jostled a little bit because I don't think the Giants are going to sub out one position player for another guy at the same position. I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to wind up, when they do some of these machinations with the roster, they're going to have to steal from another position to add a guy. So we know this is all going to change. But for the time being, 3 running backs, 3 tight ends, and 3 quarterbacks.
201-939-4513. Don't forget, folks, free and open to the public, the Giants Fan Fest will take place on Friday, September 6th, presented by Wendy's at MetLife Stadium. With doors opening at 5 p.m., we will celebrate 100 seasons of New York Giants football with a ceremony honoring the top 100 Giants, autographs and panel discussions by Giants legends, historic displays, photos with the Lombardi trophies, and an incredible drone light and fireworks show to end the night. Get your tickets now by visiting Giants.com/FanFest. Then the next morning, you can run or walk with Giants legends like Paul Dottino. The Giants Foundation will host a 5K racing kids run presented by Quest on Saturday, September 7th at 9 a.m. at MetLife Stadium. Net proceeds will benefit the Giants Foundation. All participants will receive a commemorative t-shirt, and after the race, stay for a post-race festival with appearances by the Giants legends and a live DJ. Register now, Giants.com/5K. And by the way, the Giants Foundation is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. Just a heads up, that Fan Fest is going to be awesome.
Yep.
I think you guys should really go to Giants.com/FanFest and get your seats. There's a big fireworks show at the end of the night, which should be fun. But the number of top 100 Giants that will be in the building is ginormous. Go check it out. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you go get your tickets today. And real quick, just want to remind people that we're reorganizing our podcast feeds a little bit. So the Giants Huddle podcast feed is now it's split right now, and I think eventually it'll eventually migrate over completely to the Giants Radio Network podcast feed. That's going to host all of our podcasts except for Big Blue Kickoff and Giants Media Pass. Those feeds will stay the same. Everything else is going to show up in the Giants Huddle podcast, which right now has up Matt Sytax and my reaction to the 53-man roster, my interview with Aaron Schatz from he does all the DVOA stuff. We have good analytics talk.
Right.
That was on Monday, so you can go check that out on the Giants Huddle podcast. But you'll be able to find her playbook there, Giants Hangout there, draft season there, though the draft season feed is going to remain up. And the Giants Hangout and her playbook feeds, they are going to go away, sunset, as the term goes, by the end of the month. So basically, that's now the end of the week because we are closing in on September, Datino. We're going to get some real football pretty soon. 201-939-4513. Want to do captains quick?
Yeah, go through the captains. The Giants did get a waiver claim, according to Ari Merov, who was one of the NFL national beat reporters.
Who they get?
He claims they got Anthony Johnson, a defensive back from the Packers. Iowa State prospect.
Trying to remember.
Got some height and length. That's all I know.
Rookie? Do you know what's his experience? I'm not familiar with him.
I will check on him.
I'll check it out. Let's see, Anthony Johnson.
He's a junior, by the way.
24 years old. Let's see, Iowa State. He was a 7th-round pick in 2023 out of St. Petersburg, Florida. More of a safety than corner, based on what I'm looking at here.
Yep.
So we'll see where that winds up.
Art Stapleton reported Turbo Miller is signing with the Giants practice squad.
Yeah, and there are a bunch of other ones out there too. Dan Duggan has a couple of them that we've seen out there. We'll lay low on those for now, just because
exactly
things are nebulous, and we'll see. And the Giants will make those announcements when they make it. But we'll keep an eye on if any other waiver claims happen to come through. And we talked about it, folks. I know we're all talking cornerbacks, and frankly, I think the Giants, when Brian Dable has spoken, he's talked about cornerbacks a lot. But it's a premium position, right? And it's not a premium position like wide receiver, where sometimes teams have too many of players at that position. That's generally, Paul, not the case at quarterback, much like offensive tackle, where teams want to kind of stack their players.
All right, so here's his RAS score, 8.13.
That's not bad.
With the relative athletic score.
4.5, 4.40 is fine for a safety.
And he's listed as a free safety, not as a corner. I read something that said he was a corner. He is listed as a free safety. So, yeah, the numbers in terms of athleticism, not bad at all.
Good explosion numbers, 38 vert, 10.5 broad. It's pretty good.
Yeah, there's really not a problem with any of these things. These look pretty good. Arm length a little bit less than you'd like at 31.25. I'd like him to be 32. But
and
you
the
know
shuttle
what?
and 3 cones aren't the best, but 4.31, 7.07.
Anyway, 8.13 is an overall RAS, which is solid.
Yep, that is solid. All right, let's get to the phones at 201-939-4513.
No captains?
Thank you, captains.
Again,
I keep forgetting about the captains.
We're not confirming that claim.
Correct.
We're not confirming that claim. Ari Meroff, who is one of the national beat guys, has put that out there.
Yes, that is reported by Ari Meroff. That is correct. Real quick, cut down the 5 captains this year from 10.
Yeah.
Based on the way Brian Dable described it, and then Andrew Thomas, I think, described it as well, if I recall. Maybe it was Bobby Okereke. It was one of the two that talked yesterday. Just that's how the voting kind of came out. Where last year, it was kind of spread out more amongst a bunch of guys. It was more focused on a few guys this year. So that's why it came out that Daniel Jones and Andrew Thomas are the captains on offense. Should not surprise people. Casey Kreider is a special teams captain. And then on defense, you have Dexter Lawrence and Bobby Okereke.
All guys who I think if you've been around this team at all, you're not surprised.
No.
You're just not. So.
All right, let's lead off. Jason in New Haven. Jason, what's going on, man?
What's up, fellas?
We're good.
Good. Thanks for taking my call. Just want to talk about the roster real quick. Starting 22 at the moment. I know, you guys said, and I know, of course, a lot of these things will be maybe changed or edited, granted what the front office and Dable want to do. But so far, so good as far as the roster. I will respectfully disagree with you guys. I was a big proponent of keeping 2 quarterbacks. I know everybody will talk about Daniel, having some health issues in the past, especially the latest with the ACL. and what's his name, Drew Lock getting hurt. I personally didn't see anybody picking up. What's the young man's name?
Tommy DeVito.
Tommy DeVito. Excuse me. Forgive me. I personally didn't see anybody picking up Tommy DeVito, especially this late. Especially when you talk about having to learn a new offense. I think he's one of the guys that could have, been on the practice squad. But, he made the roster, and kudos to him. That was just my, I guess, difference with the 53. I was happy to see that Whitley made the roster. I may sound crazy to some people, and I'm not calling him a better player than Kayvon, so people do not jump down my neck. But from what I saw, he looks like outside of Burns, of course, he looks like the best pure, as far as speed, pass rusher on the roster. I know people will tell me.
Who are you talking about?
He's talking about Whitley.
Whitley.
Well, yeah, I mean, going against third stringer, sure.
That's the thing. You have to take that into context.
Yeah, Jason, we never saw him line up against first or second stringers. That's my only hesitation with him. You know what I mean?
He clearly flashed amongst the next level. We discussed this several times.
Right.
Of the next level, he clearly flashed better than anybody else. And if they were going to keep one more edge, he was the guy who showed the most. And I'm a huge Darian Beavers guy. Big on Beavers. Right. But you know what? Whitley outplayed him during the last month. He did.
Right. And I get it, but we can only go based off what we see. And I know people will be like, "Oh, it's second and third stringers," and I totally understand that. But a lot of those traits I saw on, of course, I don't have coaches' film, but a lot of his speed off the edge is translatable. Those things can translate. Now, will he play better tackles? Of course he will. There'll be better tackles that he'll play. But from what I saw, I thought he was a lock to make the roster. And I thought he outplayed Basham and Aziz. That's my opinion. But I'm glad he made the roster. Two things I'm concerned. The D-line, I know people will talk about, some of the players that if we lose, it might really be an issue in terms of what's behind them. Daniel, Bobby Okereke, Andrew Thomas. But I think Dexter's one of those guys we can't miss either because I always call positive. But me personally, I don't really like the depth behind him. To me, Nacho didn't really show anything last year. I like Chapman. I was a big fan of his in the preseason, but he's a rookie still. And then Davidson and Riley, to me, are two players that they've had their moments, but to me, those are players I wouldn't be mad if the Giants kind of looked to see if they could have some upgrades there. And then the cornerback position, I just want to see what you guys think about this name, or two names. Now, they're free agents, of course. They're not going to be world beaters. I think we all know the cornerback position is a position we're all kind of hesitant about at the moment just due to not saying that the guys don't have talent, we just haven't seen them play yet or play up to a high level. Three names. Caleb Farley was released yesterday. Mm-hmm. I know he hasn't really panned out. I know he was a high first-round pick in Tennessee. Apparently, he's had a lot of injuries.
Injury history is really tough. Really tough.
I know. But I think at this point, when you're doing waiver claims, I would think that they're trying to look for some players with some upside. And when he came out of Virginia Tech, he was highly thought of as one of the best corners coming out of the draft. Desmond King got released. I know he's more of an inside corner, slot corner, but he's been a very good player for a lot of years. And then there's another young man, I think his name is Akilo Witherspoon or Achello Witherspoon.
Akilo Witherspoon from the Rams. Mm-hmm. I've been talking about him since March.
Yeah, I've looked at some PFF grades of him. Not that they're, the Bible, but they're, put in context. He's had some pretty good grades over the last few years, good size. So, like I said, I'm not saying that Joe Shane or Dable should sign any of these guys, but I personally wouldn't be surprised if maybe they took a flyer on, if the medicals check out, of course, if they took a flyer on Farley, 6'2", 6'3", had great college tape, just hasn't panned out, and maybe they take a flyer on Farley. And I want to thank you guys for taking my call. Let me know what you guys think of Farley. Like I said, I'm not saying he's going to be CB2, but it won't hurt to get some depth. And He did play under. I think Bowen was there when they drafted him.
Listen up, though. There's a technical aspect to this too. If you take a guy on waivers, you have to take his contract. Okay.
Gotcha.
Again, from this Ari who put out the list of the waiver claims, the Giants, they made one claim. They got this safety supposedly, reportedly, and that's it.
Right.
So if they are interested in him and Bowen has good intel on him, maybe they'll wait and see if he clears waivers, and maybe when he's a street free agent, now you can negotiate your own deal.
Yeah, and I would say, too, Paul, you might want to wait till after week 1 for him so you don't have to guarantee salary for the season.
That's the other part.
Right.
So there are two very, very sticky paperwork things that could alter the timing of interest.
Right. And one more thing, fella, I'll take it off the air. Schlottman. From what I remembered, I'm glad they kept him, and here's why. If I'm not mistaken, they gave him a pretty – I don't want to say they gave him a big contract or anything like that. But if I'm not mistaken, and I know sometimes those contract details could be, who knows. But if I'm not mistaken, they gave him a pretty decent-sized free agent deal to come over as the backup. So I know people have talked about Van Roten and Runyon moving over to center, but I don't know, man. After last year, I kind of want, JMS has had his issues, of course, with injuries. Hopefully they're behind him now. Hopefully he's 100% for the rest of not even 100%. Hopefully he's just healthy enough to get through the season. But if he goes down, I kind of want somebody that's played some center or is a true center. Van Roten, yes, he has that flexibility, but I don't ever really remember him playing center. And the same for Runyon. I'm sure he could do it.
Van Roten has 150 snaps at center 3 years ago.
Right.
Right. I don't know how much
Runyon does not. Runyon does not.
Okay. I'm sure Schlottman probably has more because he's a true center. I could be wrong.
No, he does. He does.
So I'd rather, if something, God forbid, was to happen to JMS, I'd rather Schlottman get that chance because instead of moving one player, now you're moving two because now you got to move Roten to center, then you got to move Stinney. I'd rather these guys just stay in their positions. If something happens to JMS, let Schlottman take over. I'm sure he knows all the protections, all the calls. If I'm not mistaken, Van Roten came later on in training camp.
Yep.
So I'm sure he doesn't know all the protections and all the calls maybe that Schlottman would know.
No, he does now. He does now.
You got to remember something. He was in Vegas
and thank
with
you,
Brasillo.
Jason. Appreciate the call.
He's with Vegas with Brasillo. He probably knows all the offensive line calls. Everything Brasillo's calling here, Van Roten knows.
Yeah, I agree.
Schlottman would be the one who actually has to learn the new stuff because he came from Minnesota.
Yeah, he was here in the spring, though. So.
He was here in the spring, but he still has less experience in the system with Brasillo than Van Roten does.
Yeah, no, I happen to agree with you. All right, let's go to Big Lou for G Nation Inside Sports. Big Lou, what's up?
What's going on, fellas? Thank you for having me.
What's up?
Well, excited about this 53-man roster. Glad to see that Van Roten is on there. Glad to see that we kept Riley and Whitley. My question is, Casey Rogers, did he make the team?
The 53, no.
Not
Is
yet.
he on the practice squad?
They have not announced practice squad yet.
Okay. Because I believe that guy has a high motor and can make an impact on this defensive front alongside Dexter Lawrence. I know he's a little undersized, but the guy plays with an intensity that we have not seen on this defense for a while. And I was just wondering what you guys' insight was as to why he didn't make the team.
Well, I mean, look at the guys they did put on the 53 yesterday. Riley is legitimate. They believe a legitimate backup nose tackle. He's got the size. He's got the girth. And as was said to us many times last year when they drafted him and they brought him here, you don't find too many humans with that size and athleticism. I don't think they were going to give up on him after just 1 year, John.
No,
I don't see any way they were going to do that. So he was going to be here. You knew Nacho was going to be here. I agree he was somewhat quiet last season, but he had a really good camp this year. And I think you would agree with that too.
Yeah, and also Nacho, I know I talked to him in the offseason. I talked to him in June, and I said to him, so do you think you're going to actually get a chance to play 3 tech? He interviewed, he goes, Every time I go a place, they tell me I'm going to be a 3 technique. Then I play nose tackle. Last year I'm going to be 3 technique. Then I got to play nose tackle. So I think he's actually going to finally get to play 3 technique this year, which he thinks is his more natural position.
Okay, so then we keep going. So behind Dexter, what else you got? You got DJ Davidson, who is kind of a hybrid, can play either of the defensive tackle spots, and I don't think Casey Rogers can. So that's an advantage for Davidson, who also was a former draft pick. And then you got your other guy, Elijah Chapman. And is there anybody who's going to actually say to you they would rather have cut Chapman, whose motor is probably even hotter than Casey Rogers? Right?
Hell no.
Okay,
Do not
so
get rid of Elijah Chapman.
Okay.
Listen, I am on board with you that we should line him up on 3rd and shorts and hand him the ball. Okay.
So at the moment, again, this is all subject to change, but you could understand the 5 guys they kept, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I was just wondering, do you really want a guy like that to end up on the practice squad so teams can come and poach him from your practice squad?
Well,
but I get it. I get it. When this is a good problem to have. Again, we've had such lackluster depth and such of a small pool to choose from that us Giants fans have kind of gotten used to it. So now when you see guys that have skill sets that you like get put on the practice squad or not make the team, you're like, why? But, you have to look at the other guys that they kept. I get it.
I would add one thing to you, Big Lou. They were not going to keep 6 defensive tackles. Not with what they're playing. They're playing stand-up edge rushers. They're not going to keep 6 defensive tackles. So if you're going to keep 5,
Correct.
somebody's got to go.
Yeah. Numbers game.
Okay?
Appreciate the call, Lou.
No, thank you guys so much, man. Keep doing what you're doing, putting that football knowledge in the air for some of these guys that don't understand it. Thank you very much, and continue to support you guys and follow you guys. I might see you at FanFest this weekend, P-Dot.
All right, you got it.
Trying to make my way up there.
Sounds good, Big Lou. Look forward to seeing you, man.
Take care.
Take it easy. And Paul and I are going to be there. I'm not quite sure where we're going to be. I think we're going to be somewhere in like the Legacy Club area doing some interviews. So if any fans, I don't know what fans have access to the Legacy Club while
After
event.
we're done with the interviews, I'll go outside.
Oh, I know. So will I.
As long as it's not raining.
Yeah, but that's going to be a really fun night. So everybody should go check that out. We have a couple open lines, by the way, at 201-939-4513. Let's go to Scott in New Mexico. He's up next. Hi, Scott.
Hey, guys. I think I'm going to change my handle to Little Scott if I follow these guys, Big Lou or Big Ed. I think it makes more sense. In any event, I'm actually a little nervous. But before I get into my main point, I don't understand why a guy like, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Klaust, the linebacker.
Cloyd.
Okay. He recorded 16 tackles in the game and didn't make the squad. Do you know the last time any NFL player, whether in preseason or in regular, had that many tackles or more? How far you have to go back?
I have no idea.
2007, when David Harris had 21 tackles. And a guy who made 16 tackles, we got Chapman on the squad because he chased somebody down, a tackle chasing a wide receiver down. And this guy makes 16 tackles.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
And this guy makes 16 tackles and doesn't make the squad. So my question to you is, and this is also with McFadden and Coughlin still being injured, as far as I know. I don't know if that's been updated or not. But you have a guy who does that, and yet he doesn't make the squad, which to me is ridiculous. And maybe you can give me some insight as to why a guy who does that doesn't make the squad. And if it's basically the decisions are already made in training camp, then why have preseason at all?
Scott, let John hit the repeat button on what he said about 5 minutes ago.
Third stringers.
Okay.
It's one thing, Scott, to do it against starters. There's another thing to do it against other teams' backups and third stringers, which is what KJ Cloyd did. Also, KJ Cloyd, do you know how many special team snaps you played in that final preseason game?
Probably not.
0.
Bingo.
And if you're a linebacker and you can't play special teams, guess what? You're not making the back end of the linebacker roster. So those are the main reasons. I also happen to think tackle stats are nonsense. I just don't think they're that important. Where'd those tackles happen? Is he making those tackles 7 yards down the field? Well, then, frankly, I don't care about the tackle, but you shouldn't be making tackles 7 yards down the field on a run play. So put all those things together, with that type of production and his motor, I would not be surprised him, being a guy that they could add to the practice squad. But, if you're going to play linebacker, you need to be a special teams guy. And again, he did not play a special team snap. I think he only played 4 special team snaps in the second preseason game. So that's a situation where don't take too much out of tackle stats in a preseason game when the other team's not playing any of their players.
Scott, to reinforce the point, the Giants
Sure.
have 10 linebackers right now this morning on this roster.
Okay.
6 of them play specials. Basham, Coughlin, Johnson, Muasau, Whitley, and McFadden. They all play specials.
Okay. My second question that I have, I'm
Yes.
a little nervous about the backup tackles. I wasn't impressed with Joshua Miles, and certainly I don't know the status of Evan Neal, but obviously he has a problem with that ankle. I don't know if they had the MRIs yet on him and Schmidt yet. I assume they probably did. I don't know if they.
Yeah, I don't think Brian Dable was asked about those guys yesterday, right?
We'll
On the
find
MRI
out more
results?
today, I'm sure.
Yeah.
We didn't get that yesterday.
Yeah, the media was so obsessed with asking about the roster, they forgot to ask about the 2 guys that had imaging done on Sunday.
But my query to you guys is this. Do you feel comfortable after watching the performances of who your swing tackle is going to be? I wasn't impressed with Joshua Miles, as I said. Evan Neal, I still don't know what the problem is. He should be playing better than he is. So the question to me is, who, in your opinion, right now, as you look at the 53-man roster, who's your backup tackle? John Runyon's still a little banged up, so I'm assuming by game day he'll be okay. So you should have your line intact, as you illuminated last week about Thomas and then Illuminor and then Radin and who's the other guys that are going to be? Schmidt, of course, and Runyon. But if any one of those guys get hurt, and offensive linemen are going to get hurt, it's going to happen. Who's that swing tackle that you think right now is the guy who's won the job? Because I have no confidence in what I looked at in regards to the swing tackles.
Well, what I would say, Scott, I think if Andrew Thomas goes down, you would have Illuminor move to left tackle, and you would have Evan Neal slide in a right tackle. That would be my guess. Mm-hmm. If you had a guard, if you had just Illuminor go down, I'm pretty sure you would have Evan Neal slide in a right tackle. If a guard goes down, Aaron Stinney would be the first guy off the bench, and I think if John Michael Schmitz goes down, Schlotman would be the first guy up off the bench. That would be my guess.
Yep.
Okay. And I'll close with this. One of the things that I found kind of interesting, I listened to the Warren Sharp interview, which I thought was great because I learned a lot. One of the things he stated, in the 2022 season, the Giants were still last. And that was the year they made the playoff. Were still last in scoring points in the first quarter. And they were obviously last in 2023.
If you remember right, Scott, they had a bunch of comeback wins in 2022. They had to come back and win a lot of those games.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So the most important thing right now is for them to score points. With the offensive line the way it is, and also, as Paula, you already know, I'm a big believer in stopping the run and being able to run, which goes back to my Vince Lombardi days. Because that's what he stressed on how you win championships. Even though you're going to pass probably 60% or 65% of the time in the modern NFL. Do they have the running backs now, as you see it, that can do it? I think they have the ability with the players to stop the run, but can they run the football? And I'll leave it there, and I'll take your answer.
Well, Scott, real quick. Scott,
Okay.
real quick before you go. When you say can they run the ball, can you be can you give me a threshold you're talking about here?
At least gain at least 100 to 120 yards a game.
All right, that's a good question. Let me see. And Scott, appreciate the call. Let me take a look at where that would rank you.
We're talking
in the
team
standings
total,
last
or we're
year.
talking about one guy?
I think as a unit, he's talking about. Can you rush for 100 to 120 yards per
I think
game?
they can. I think they can rush for over 100 yards a game. You'd love to rush for 120 to 130 a game. That's what you'd love to do. I'm not sure that they'll necessarily do that because I think they're also going to be more of a pass-oriented team. We've discussed this, John. Game plan-wise, I think Dable's going to use a lot of short passing game looking for yak yardage. more than he's necessarily going to lean on the run game.
All right, so last year, in terms of rushing yards per game for a team, the league leader in rushing yards per game were the Ravens. They were at 156, all right? So obviously that's the high end of it. That was number one in the league. You go down the list and you get to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So the Giants were actually right in the middle of the league last year. I think I did a quick math here. I think they're 17th, and they finished with 110 yards per game. If you get under 100, you're
not good
in
at
the
all.
bottom.
Not good at
1,
all.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You're in the bottom quartile or so of the league.
Yeah, you do definitely not want to do
I don't
that.
think the Giants will be down that far. Now, I'm frankly more interested in where you rank in, EPA per run or DVOA running game, because that defines efficiency. And Warren Sharp, or was it Aaron Schatz, I think, that talked about this on our interview on The Huddle on Monday, Pearson, where the most important part of the run game is how well you do on short yardage, right? Can you punch the ball in the red zone? Or in the goal to go? Can you gain 3rd and 2s and 3rd and 1s on the ground? That's where you're going to get your most EPA or DVOA.
Yeah, that was Aaron Schatz.
Out of Schatz, right? Out of your run game. So I want to see this team be efficient running the ball. Can you get 4 or 5 yards per carry? Can you convert those 3rd and shorts? Can you run the ball in when you're in the red zone? Mm-hmm. Can Daniel Jones be a big part of the run game again, like in 2022, where the run game plays off itself with read option and things like that? That's what I'm more interested in than looking at like the total amount of yards, Paul. Does the running game help you situationally? I think that's the most important thing.
I call it the efficient running game, which is what the Giants had near the end of the 2011 season. It was a horrible running team all year long. And then in the last month of the season, they started to become efficient. And they were able to run the ball, move the chains, run in the red zone when they needed to. And they took that into the postseason. It's about an efficient run game. You want to call situational, that's fine.
No, same difference.
It's a synonym.
Well, look,
It's a synonym.
An EPA per run in DVOA measures running efficiency. That's what those numbers measure.
So, but in general, you want to be able to run the ball for at least 110 yards a game. And if you can do 120 to 130, that's a great number, but that also depends on the style of offense you're going to play.
Yeah.
And we know the Giants are going to throw the ball more.
And Devin Singletary, Paul, is to me,
steady.
He's above replacement level running back.
I agree with that.
Good, solid, middle of the road NFL starter.
And the only reason the Giants might even touch any of those numbers is because Jones does run himself too.
Right.
Okay?
Correct.
Now, official notification from the NFL.
Oh, on waivers.
It is out.
Okay, what do you
Anthony Johnson is the Giants' only claim that they were awarded. I don't know if they claimed any others, but he was the claim that was awarded. They did not lose anybody to waiver claims to any other team. There were 3 offensive tackles that got claimed off of waivers, just to give you an idea of how thin that market is.
How about corner?
Corner, well, the guy says
they
just
list
say
them as
DBs. That doesn't help me.
That's not helpful at all.
That doesn't help me. But I know Scott's worried about the thinness at the tackle spot. Well, it's thin around the league. You got Zachary Thomas was claimed by New England from the Rams. You got DeMontre Jacobs was claimed by New England from Denver. So they claimed 2 offensive tackles, John. That tells you how thin the Patriots are at offensive line.
Well, and that's one of the reasons, not to get off topic, but that's why I can't start. I love Drake May. You can't put him behind that offensive line or in the air. The poor kids are getting murdered.
He needs insurance.
Yeah.
I hope Blue Cross is, I don't want to name it. I'm sorry. I take it back.
MetLife.
Yes, MetLife. Thank you so much, John. Jarrett Kingston was claimed by Carolina from San Francisco. 3 offensive tackles got claimed on waivers. And honestly, do any of those guys move the needle for you offhand? Not that I know of.
No, me neither. All right, real quick, folks, want to do a little business here before we get to Paul in Miami. And Paul, you're up next. Giant fans, take your fam to the next level with a season ticket membership. Stay connected to the club all year round, not just on game days. Memberships are now available for the 2024 season. To learn more about all the exclusive member benefits, visit Giants.com/tickets. Limited inventory is available. And Giants TV is the Giants connected TV streaming app. It brings original video content and game highlights on demand and direct to Big Blue fans. Giants TV is free on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire TV, and the Giants mobile app. All right, let's go to Paul in Miami. He's going to be our final caller today. Hi, Paul.
Hey, good afternoon. How you guys doing today?
We're great. What's up?
Not much. I just had a couple of terminology and logistical questions for you.
Sure.
First of all, I appreciate all the hard work, the content you guys put out. It's great to listen to as much as possible.
Thank you.
Now, as far as I've heard the term nose guard and nose tackle. Is there a difference between the two positions?
Same thing. Same position, right, Paul? As far as I understand it.
People have used it interchangeably for a long time, but it's really the same. The difference is defensive tackle is one spot, which can be divided into two. That's the 3 technique, and that's the nose tackle.
Yeah, and basically the way the technique works, Paul, is that you have your 0 technique. That's what the defensive tackle or nose tackle lines up directly on the center. That's what a nose tackle is. Once you start, moving in between the center and the guard, then you're a 1 technique. If you're lining up right on top of the guard, you're a 2 technique. And then between the guard and tackle, that's your 3 technique, and so on and so forth.
And basically it was Dexter Lawrence who got the word from Wink Martindale when he got here. I'm going to make you a Pro Bowl defensive tackle because you're going to line up as a 0 technique. You're going to line up right over the center, and you are going to squash people. And that's what he did.
Sure. And I'm sure I could look some of this stuff up on Google, but I figured you guys get paid the big bucks, so I'd rather ask you.
No, that's okay.
Now, the difference between a hurry and a pressure is listed according to NFL stats.
A pressure, again, I don't know about NFL stats, but I can tell you for PFF's purposes, and I'm guessing the NFL stats probably uses the same deal, a pressure encompasses sacks, quarterback hits, and hurries. You put those together, and that equals your total pressures. Hurries is one of those 3 buckets, right? You have the sacks, where you get home and you actually tackle the ball carrier. Mm-hmm. Quarterback hits, where you knock down the quarterback, though he gets rid of the ball.
Yep.
And then hurries, when you get the guys that track this decide what you did impacted the quarterback on that play by getting close to him. So that's what a hurry is, and it's one of the 3 things that combine to form your total pressure.
He was forced to get rid of the ball before he wanted to.
Correct.
That's what it comes down to, and that's what Wink Martindale valued more than anything else. He valued the pressures.
And the reason, Paul, pressures are considered more predictive is because if you look at guys from year to year, generally speaking, the same player will have the same amount of pressures from year to year, even though his sack numbers might fluctuate, but the pressures will remain steady. So oftentimes, people believe pressure rate will indicate more the quality of the player than sacks will, because sacks are dependent on your secondary covering long enough so you can get home, whether or not the quarterback gets rid of the ball quick, while the player has more control over their pressure rate than they do have over their sack rate.
And to further, I know we're lengthening this, and I am sorry, but to give you
it's good info.
To give you even more of an explanation, quarterback hits impact that quarterback. If you only got 2 sacks, but you've got 10 quarterback hits, remember when Eli got blasted by San Francisco in the playoff game?
Well.
He was hit like a dozen times in that game. Well, that's impactful. Quarterback hits can be more impactful than sacks. Just like hurries can force a quarterback into making a bad throw and you get an interception. Instead of just getting a sack for a loss of 7, you get the ball back. So hurries can be very fruitful.
Great. No, thank you for that. And the last part of this, now if a player makes the initial 53, and then the team picks up another player off of waivers, the player that they pick up has to be automatically signed on to the 53, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so...
and I think they have to remain on the 53 for at least 2 games.
So the Giants have to get rid of somebody who's on the Sporting's 53 for Anthony Johnson.
Correct, and Johnson must be on the roster for weeks 1 and 2.
Correct. So somebody on this 53 from this morning that we talked about is going to have to be removed. for Anthony Johnson.
And that person can either be just released outright or placed on waivers from that point, the person who's leaving the 53?
Yeah, I mean, if it's someone that has under
4 years.
4 years,
4
of,
years.
of
4
experience,
years or less.
he has to go through waivers. If he's a veteran with over 4 years, he just gets waived outright and becomes a street free agent.
Right.
All right, no, thank you, because I was wondering if an NFL team would possibly, for example, send a guy to waivers initially before the 53, but keep a guy who they like less in order to make room for somebody they're expecting to pick up, if the way I'm stating it makes sense, to have a better chance of keeping both players.
There are gambles that you will make, like we said before, like Bryce Ford Wheaton, right? It's under 4 years. Under 4 years has to be waived. 4 years or more has to be cut. So here's the problem. If, like what you're saying, would you necessarily get rid of some other guy because maybe you think he's not going to get taken? You could. I mean, that could be one of the reasons why Bryce Ford Wheaton was kept, because they were afraid he would get scapped up, and they don't think that Boykin and Robinson will. You make some of those decisions sometimes based on the fear that someone else will grab your guy.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you guys for the explanation. Tremendous, and let's hope the season will go good enough to keep me in a good mood, at least till the Knicks start up.
I appreciate it, Paul. Thank you. You know what, though? Those are actually good questions, because that's like
under
the hood,
questions.
complicated questions that probably a lot of fans don't understand. So, Paul, good questions. We're happy to answer
All
them for
good
you.
stuff, yes. Procedure stuff.
We got to run. I have our NFC East Writer Roundtable podcast. I'm recording in about 4 minutes, so I got to get set up for that. Paul, this was fun. I appreciate the time as always, my friend.
Yeah, it was a good day. Good day, and hopefully we'll have some more news for you by tomorrow.
And I believe you and SciTech tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay, I haven't
correct?
looked.
I believe that's correct. But SciTech, I believe, is going on his Labor Day. He's summering over Labor Day weekend beginning on Friday. So he'll be off summering where he summers.
He needs to learn you can't do that when you get near opening day.
He summers. For Paul Dottino, I'm John Trell.
See
For
ya!
Pearson Butler, we'll see you tomorrow, everybody. It's all brought to you by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants.